There was once a question so quiet. It walked between stars. It stayed longer at the throne of gods than anywhere else. Even gods frowned when it knocked. No one could answer, not even the heavens knew why. He was called Vihan, not a king, not a soldier, a keeper of small things. He mended broken bells. He read names on fallen leaves. The village believed he listened to the world. They thought his silence was prayer. But inside him, something restless stirred. A question lived in his chest, like a small, stubborn flame. It did not ask for directions. It asked for proof. Vihan lived on the edge of two worlds. Mountains leaned toward the sea there. Old temples watched the tides. The villagers said the gods met at that shore. They said the gods argued like men. And once a year, the sea returned a single carved bone. It was always the same shape. Unknown language etched along its edge. Vihan kept that bone. He listened to it at night. He swore it answered him in a voice only he could hear. But what did that voice ask, you might wonder? This is where the story slips its guard. Because the bone's question was not meant for ears. It was meant for courage. The year the frost did not come, things grew strange. Seeds refused to wake. Rivers moved in wrong directions. Rumors crawled into huts like insects. A prophet arrived from the capital. He wore two masks, one for the public, one for the night. He spoke of omens, of doors that should remain closed. He told the villagers to fast, to pray desperately. Vihan listened. He did not fast. He listened to the bone. Every night, the carved lines glowed like a map. But what he found etched beneath those lines would change everything. Vihan left his village at dusk. He walked barefoot along a road that had no name. The trees watched him pass. At a ruined pillar, he met a woman. She was called Isha. She carried a jar of moonlight. Her eyes looked like questions. She did not ask who he was. She asked if he had ever seen the wind apologize. He had not. She smiled as if she had expected that. They traveled together. They crossed a plain where statues of forgotten kings lay face down in dust. They found other things too. A child who spoke backwards. An old soldier who forgot how to hate. A trader who traded memories for stones. Each had a story. Each had a wound. And each had, tucked inside, a tiny shard of the same carved bone. But gathering those pieces was the easy part. What the pieces wanted was harder. They reached the sea of glass. It was night and the stars seemed stitched to the water. There a temple floated, cracked and gentle. Within its heart slept a god. Not an angry god, not a loud one. This god slept like a man who has been betrayed by his own name. Vihan placed the bone pieces on the god's chest. The god woke and did the only thing left to gods when they were unsure. He laughed and then wept. "Why do you ask?" the god said. Vihan answered with the bone's whisper. "A question. A question," the god repeated, and the sound of his voice folded the waves. "Yes," Vihan said, "a question that has no answer." Every god knows an answer for pride, but none could answer the one Vihan carried. The gods convened. They brought books stitched of night. They summoned winds with careful fingers. They tried promises. They tried war. They asked oracles. They fed questions to beasts. But the answer slipped like a fish. At the Temple of Mirrors, a god recited the world's history. At the ruins of last names, another measured the length of sorrow. None of it fit the curve of the bone's whisper. The carved lines glinted like teeth. No god would say the word that might quiet the question. And then, when all logic bowed, a choice appeared where no path should be. Isha warned Vihan. Some questions demand more than answers, she said. Some ask to be lived. Vihan considered that. He thought it noble and small. He thought it may be dangerous. But danger, he had learned, is sometimes merely the next honest thing. They embarked on the Covenant Road. At every mile, the world tested them. A town offered them mirrors that showed futures in exchange for years. Vihan refused. He would not borrow a tomorrow. A mountain offered a crown if he performed one brave lie. He refused again. Each refusal cost them something. Each refusal renewed the bone's glow. When they reached the Valley of Names, a voice called his true name, and everything trembled. The valley spoke of debts, of vows made with dry lips. Vihan listened. He made a small promise under its trees. He promised to ask the question, not to command its answer. That distinction is a small door, but it is a dangerous one. A god of small mercies followed them, not to help, to witness. He gave Vihan a single thread. Use it to stitch what is torn, the god said. Vihan took the thread, but did not understand its weight. They reached the place between. It was a crossroads the world pretends not to notice. Skies were two colors there. Time moved sideways. Vihan knelt and laid the reassembled bone upon cracked earth. Isha lit the moon jar and poured light into the carved lines. Everything breathed. The thread trembled in Vihan's palm. The god of small mercies watched like a man who knows an old grief. Then the world tilted, not with thunder, with a hush. From the bone rose a sound. It was not a word, not at first. It was memory braided with dust. It showed Vihan a child who had once watched her brother drown. It showed Isha, who had sold her laughter to buy shelter for strangers. It showed a god who had once refused to save a single sparrow and had never forgiven himself. The question did not want an answer. It wanted reckoning. Vihan understood then why even gods kept silent. Because this question asked them to be small and to be honest. He lifted the thread. He did not stitch cloth. He stitched name to name. He bound shame to apology. He wove the broken things back into themselves. With each stitch, a truth was returned. A river changed its mind and flowed back. A soldier remembered the song he had been given to forget. A statue rose and sat like a tired old man, finding his bones again. It was slow work, painful work, necessary work. A voice, holy and simple, asked Vihan one last thing. If this question is answered, what then? Vihan thought of the village, of the bell he had once mended. He thought of the bone's small glow. He thought of Isha's eyes. He thought of all the tiny reckonings. He answered softly, "Then I will learn how to keep it." But the gods had not expected that answer. They had expected thunder or abdication. They had not expected care. Something changed. Not the world's laws, not fate's great machine, but a small law inside the world. The kind of law that makes mothers notice their sleeping children. The kind of law that allows a promise to keep breathing. They returned, carrying nothing grand, no crown, no prophecy. They carried the knowledge that some questions do not end. They learned that not every mystery must be solved to matter. Some questions are like wells. You lean over them, you listen, you throw in a coin of your own humility, and sometimes the coin is enough. Vihan placed the bone back at the shore. The carved lines faded until they were simple marks again. He walked among his people and mended the bells as before. But his hands moved differently now. Each swing was deliberate, each knot chosen. People noticed, not because anything miraculous happened, but because small things began to be loved as if they were answers. The question remained. It sits at the edge of days. It hums beneath marriages and wars. It will come to you in a gaze across a market. It will come to you as an ache in the middle of the night. You may ask it, or you may put it back in your pocket. Either way, it will teach you patience. If even gods could not answer it with certainty, what makes us think we should not live it? We go to gods for answers. We go to books for maps. But sometimes the bravest thing is to keep asking the question until our hands learn to hold it without breaking. To sit with the not knowing and make from that silence an answer that is quiet and human and fierce. To stitch apology to shame. To choose care over certainty. So here is the question they could not answer. It is small. It is terrible. It is ours. When the God who made promises forgot one, who will tend the promise's garden? No single voice will speak the final sentence. And perhaps that is the point. Maybe some questions were never meant to be slain. Maybe they were meant to be kept. Like a bell hung in a temple, rung sometimes, so the living remember how to listen. What would you do with a question the gods could not answer?